Welcome to the debate. Imagine reaching your 65th birthday, packing your entire life into a couple of suitcases, and moving to a country where you don't speak a single word of the language.
And where the afternoon humidity regularly hits, like 90%?
Right, exactly. The traffic is legendary, the heat is intense, and yet your world-class healthcare costs less than a casual dinner out. Today, we're analyzing a demographic shift that, it fundamentally challenges how we think about aging.
Yeah, we're looking closely at the Thai sunset phenomenon. We are seeing this massive wave of Westerners in their 60s walking away from familiar major cities.
Places like London, San Francisco, Sydney.
Exactly, and they're intentionally choosing Thailand as their ultimate retirement destination.
So the source material we're analyzing today frames this migration not as some sort of retreat, but as a holistic, revitalizing transformation of the final chapters of life.
Which is a very bold claim.
It is. But I will be arguing that relocating to Thailand offers a unique, powerful convergence. You have a profound cultural respect for elders colliding with, incredible practical and financial benefits.
Right.
And this creates an environment where you can actively reverse the psychological decline we usually associate with aging in the West.
And my position is that while the financial math is absolutely undeniable, the narrative we're looking at severely romanticizes the cultural transition.
You think it's too optimistic?
I think it's an economic escape hatch, to be perfectly honest. I'll argue that this migration is, at its core, a pragmatic, financially driven trade-off.
Okay.
Painting it as this magical, seamless cultural integration, it glosses over the profoundly isolating reality of navigating an extreme climate and an immense language barrier late in life.
Well, let's look at the psychology of aging in the West to understand why this move is so transformative. In our home countries, we are deeply conditioned by the time is money philosophy.
Sure.
We optimize, we rush, and as we age, that internalized stress takes a massive physiological toll. Your cortisol is constantly elevated.
That's fair. The West is stressful.
Right. Then you look at Thailand, which operates on the philosophy of Mai Pen Rai, which is essentially let it go, don't worry about the small frictions of life.
But is that a philosophy they actually adopt, or just a nice local catchphrase?
It's not just the vacation catchphrase. When you transplant an older adult into a society that actually runs on that frequency, it actively downregulates their nervous system. But it's the synergy that makes it work.
The synergy of what?
You combine that psychological release with a society that structurally respects the elderly, then you add the immense financial leverage.
There's the money.
Well, yeah. You are trading bare survival in a small, overpriced Western apartment for a villa with a pool in Koh Samui, and that's backed by world-class healthcare in Bangkok. It is a complete structural upgrade to the human experience of aging.
See, the problem is that the narrative uses the affordable housing and cheap healthcare, what the text literally calls the boring stuff, to excuse a lot of severe environmental friction.
I wouldn't call it excusing.
I would. The actual engines of the Thai sunset are strictly financial. The material points out very real challenges, like a tropical climate that physically shocks an aging system.
True, the heat is intense.
And the grinding urban traffic. Plus, the sheer impossibility of easily mastering a tonal language where one word can mean like 5 entirely different things depending on your pitch.
Which the material frames as an adventure.
Right, and framing those intense daily hurdles as some sort of adventure that keeps you young is a dangerous sugarcoating.
Oh, come on.
No, seriously. Moving to a country where you cannot easily communicate complex medical needs or navigate local bureaucracy isn't a recipe for deep cultural integration. It is a recipe for isolation.
But that isolation
is masked by the extreme comfort of a favorable exchange rate.
Okay, but if you're listening to this on a commute in London right now, the idea of giving up your familiar network probably sounds terrifying. I get that.
Very terrifying.
But look at what you are actually trading it for, based on the material's imagery. You wake up without an alarm, you walk down to a local market smelling of jasmine and grilled pork, and you sit down for a local Thai coffee.
It sounds like a lovely 2-week vacation.
But it's their daily life. That sensory experience represents integration into a completely different community rhythm. And more importantly, look at how locals treat elders.
which is undeniably different than the West.
Exactly. In the West, aging is something we hide away in institutions. In Thailand, it's an honored stage of life. Multi-generational living is the norm, and that respect bleeds into the public square.
Sure, they use the why.
Right. When a retiree is greeted with a genuine smile and a Y, that traditional slight bow with the hands pressed together, that is a daily structural affirmation of their dignity. It prevents the epidemic of loneliness that literally shortens lifespans back home.
Wait, I have to stop you there. Because the reality of living in that environment is totally different from the aesthetic of drinking coffee at a morning market.
How so?
You are describing the experience of a perpetual tourist. Yes, the Y is a beautiful gesture of respect, but does receiving it mean you are deeply integrated into the cultural fabric?
It means you are acknowledged. You aren't invisible.
Acknowledged, yes, but you mentioned Mai Pen Rai, downregulating the nervous system. I argue these retirees aren't actually adopting Mai Pen Rai as a deep internal philosophy.
Then what are they doing?
They are living in an emotional, gated community.
An emotional gated community? That's a bit harsh.
Think about it. They are completely insulated from the actual stresses of Thai society by their massive purchasing power.
Well,
It is incredibly easy to say don't worry about it when a foreign pension makes you effectively wealthy in the local economy.
I don't see how that negates the benefit, though.
If the plumbing breaks in your Koh Samui villa, you aren't achieving a Zen state of assimilation. You're just paying a local worker a fraction of what it would cost in San Francisco to fix it.
Right.
That is economic insulation. You aren't experiencing Thai culture. You are experiencing the wealthy expat layer hovering just above it.
But the economic advantage doesn't suddenly invalidate the psychological benefits of the surrounding environment.
It definitely changes the context.
Maybe, but you cannot just buy structural societal respect in San Francisco, no matter how much money you have. The respect for elders is woven into the social fabric.
I'm not denying the cultural respect exists.
It's in the way people step aside for you, the way you are spoken to, the way you're accommodated in public spaces. Even if your money provides a buffer against certain logistical stresses, the baseline frequency of the society is slower and more forgiving.
Slower. Yes.
And that shifts your internal state. You're no longer invisible, which is the primary devastating complaint of Western retirees.
You're no longer invisible, sure, but you also cannot communicate.
Will you learn?
We have to look at the linguistic realities the material explicitly outlines. Thai is a highly complex tonal language.
It is difficult, yeah.
The source material uses this anecdote about a retiree accidentally ordering 5 chickens instead of 5 bowls of rice.
Right, it's a funny, charming little moment.
It's presented as this charming, funny mishap. But untack the mechanics of that for a moment. If your ear isn't trained to hear the difference between a rising and a falling tone, you are consistently making basic communicative errors.
But you get better over time?
Day after day, year after year. That strips a complex, highly educated adult of their nuance, their humor, and their personality. It essentially reduces them to the communicative level of a toddler.
That's entirely unfair.
Is it? If you cannot have a deep, philosophical conversation with your neighbor, how does that foster any meaningful integration?
You're assuming that absolute fluency is the only metric for engagement?
It's a pretty important one.
I look at those exact frictions, the language barrier, figuring out the public transport, adapting to the climate, as a cognitive gym.
A cognitive gym.
Yes. In the West, the pursuit of a completely frictionless retirement usually leads to what the text calls a slow fade out. We stop being challenged. Everything is easy, everything is familiar.
And comfortable.
But because it's comfortable, our neural pathways literally stop growing and we atrophy.
There is a massive difference between the healthy stress of doing a daily crossword puzzle or learning to paint, and the toxic stress of being fundamentally misunderstood in your daily life.
But this is healthy stress. Friction is the opposite of frailty. Neuroplasticity in your 70s doesn't happen by sitting in a perfectly climate-controlled room doing Sudoku.
So it happens by struggling to buy rice?
It happens when you are forced to actively learn how to order that bowl of rice. It happens when you have to adapt your body to the heat, when you must remain highly engaged with your physical environment just to get through the day.
That sounds exhausting.
Overcoming those barriers is precisely what the material means by a bold new beginning. It acts as an active, daily defense against cognitive decline.
The puzzle of living in Thailand keeps the mind remarkably sharp because the stakes are real.
The cognitive gym analogy sounds fantastic on paper, but we are talking about people in their 70s and 80s whose physiological resilience is naturally decreasing.
Which is why the healthcare system there is so crucial.
Let me finish this point, though. The romanticization of ordering 5 chickens glosses over what happens when you need to explain a nuanced emotional state to a friend. Or, more importantly, when you need to communicate a complex medical symptom to a pharmacist.
They have translators for that in the hospitals.
But in daily life, the friction goes from being a fun puzzle to being profoundly alienating. And the climate alone, the material, literally describes the humidity as a shock to the system. You cannot neuroplasticity your way out of heat stroke.
Okay, but does that cognitive gym matter if you get physically ill? That is precisely where the reality of the healthcare infrastructure comes in.
The hospitals.
Yes, the practical benefits overwhelmingly mitigate the exact risks you're highlighting. Let's look at the surviving versus thriving equation from the material.
Sure, let's look at it.
One of the greatest sources of chronic terror for the elderly in the West is the broken healthcare system. You wait 6 months for an MRI on a declining knee on the NHS in the UK.
Or you face literal bankruptcy in the US for routine surgery.
Exactly. In Thailand, specifically in Bangkok and Chiang Mai, retirees have immediate access to JCI-accredited hospitals.
Which we should probably clarify for the listener. That just means they meet the exact same global gold standard safety and quality certifications as the top-tier hospitals in the US or Europe.
Right, exactly. And the material notes, these facilities look more like luxury hotels than clinics. You walk in, you see a world-class, internationally trained specialist that same afternoon.
For a fraction of the cost.
For the price of a nice dinner back home? This entirely alters the risk profile of aging. It isn't just about saving money. It is about the immediate, high-quality resolution of the physical vulnerabilities you are so worried about.
I completely agree on the medical front.
The financial leverage stops you from merely surviving and allows you to actually thrive.
Look, the medical and real estate arbitrage is brilliant. I will never argue with the math.
Because the math is undeniable.
It is.
If your retirement savings barely cover a damp, cramped apartment in a western city, but can secure a modern condo with a mountain view in northern Thailand, the math absolutely dictates the move.
So you agree it's a structural upgrade?
Financially, yes. But this just proves my point about conceptual clarity. This is an economic escape hatch.
You keep using that phrase. Because it's accurate. The narrative we are discussing tries to package this as a spiritual awakening, this whole Thai sunset magic. I'm arguing that the cultural magic is largely a post hoc justification.
I don't think it's fair to say it's just an excuse.
People are not packing up their lives and moving 6,000 miles away, primarily to learn a tonal language or to adopt the philosophy of Mai Pen Rai. They are moving because they have been priced out of a dignified old age in their home countries.
You are creating a false dichotomy between economic necessity and cultural transformation.
I think one clearly leads the other.
But they aren't mutually exclusive. They are symbiotic. Yes, the financial arbitrage is the key that unlocks the door. But once they walk through that door, the financial freedom allows them to invest heavily in hobbies, in travel, and in their physical health.
With their Western pensions.
Right. And they do this within a cultural container that genuinely respects them. You cannot separate the modern condo with a mountain view from the Thai culture that surrounds it.
I think you can if you stay in the condo.
But they don't. The economic leverage simply gives them the bandwidth to appreciate the jasmine and the grilled pork without the underlying gnawing panic of financial ruin.
The panic of financial ruin is gone, yes. But the environment they're engaging with remains incredibly demanding. Even with a luxury condo to retreat to, the physical realities of the tropics are relentless.
It takes an adjustment period.
By overemphasizing the luxury clinics and the cheap cost of living, we minimize the profound resilience required to actually stay there long term.
Which the material does acknowledge.
Barely. If a retiree reads this material and believes they are just seamlessly trading an office chair for a hammock, they are going to be entirely unprepared for the isolation of not speaking the language fluently.
But isn't retirement supposed to be an adventure?
The text asks that exact question. Isn't that what retirement should be, an adventure? And my answer is, well, not necessarily.
Why not?
For many people, retirement should be a time of deep connection with lifelong friends and family, in a culture where you intuitively understand the unspoken rules. Transplanting yourself away from your deep roots purely for cheaper healthcare and a nicer view is a heavy, heavy trade-off.
It's absolutely a trade-off. But look closely at the alternative.
The West.
Yes. If they stay in that small apartment in London or San Francisco, rationing their heating during the winter, waiting half a year to see a doctor for chronic pain, and living in a society that largely renders them invisible, where is the deep connection there?
That is a bleak picture.
Because it's a bleak reality for many. The Thai sunset isn't a perfect postcard. The material is completely honest about the heat and the traffic, but it offers a vibrant, dynamic alternative.
I can see that.
The friction of the language and the humidity is just the price of admission to a life where you are structurally respected, where your money buys you total security, and where your daily routine is filled with new sensory experiences. It takes resilience, but it rewards that resilience with a genuinely bold new chapter.
You know, the bleakness of the Western alternative is definitely where we find some critical common ground.
We can definitely agree the current system isn't working.
Right. The practical advantages highlighted in the material, the immediate healthcare access, the housing flexibility, they are undeniably compelling.
Unbeatable, really.
Honestly, when a JCI-accredited hospital in Bangkok can offer an MRI and a specialist consultation on the same day for a few $100s, it exposes a profound systemic dysfunction back in the West.
It absolutely does.
I just believe we must be radically honest about what this is. The people making this move are pioneers navigating a difficult frontier armed with very good exchange rates.
That's a fair way to put it.
They are making a pragmatic calculation executed in a beautiful but incredibly challenging environment, rather than just seamlessly blending into a tropical utopia.
And the material itself shows us that this rare convergence actually works for those willing to embrace it. Thailand offers a solution that simultaneously removes the financial terror of aging while inserting the retiree into a culture that actively honors their stage of life.
If they can handle the heat.
Right, if they can handle the heat. Whether you view the tonal language in the Bangkok traffic as a joyful cognitive gym or a challenging daily friction, it undeniably turns retirement into a genuine adventure. It completely rewrites the script on the slow fade-out of a traditional Western decline.
Which leaves us, and our listeners, with a profound question about how we view our own final chapters.
Exactly.
Do you optimize for the frictionless comfort of the familiar, a place where you instinctively understand the language and the roads, even if it means shrinking your world and stretching your pension to the absolute breaking point?
Or are you willing to embrace the intense humidity, the chaotic traffic, and the humbling challenge of a foreign language to unlock a vibrant, economically secure, and deeply different final act?
It's a tough call.
It really is. Whether you choose the quiet suburban retreat or the hammock in the land of smiles, it really comes down to what kind of garden you want to grow in during that final season. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.